Hey fellow tankers, Mobius Y here with another World of Tanks console related video, and after the positive reception of my drive around Overlord in a previous video, I decided I'm going to probably do this on some additional maps, including some old maps. Now today, as you can see, we're doing Lakeville. This is a very old map that's been around since shortly after the release of this game on the Xbox 360, so pretty much February, March of 2014. This map's been around for a very long time, and yet people still don't really know how to play it. So let's go ahead and change the mini-map in the bottom right corner there. So the first thing to do in Lakeville is check your tiering. Simple as that, especially if you're in a heavy tank. There's two things to notice here on Lakeville. There's generally two areas on the map. You've got the lake side of the map, which basically takes over from the 4 line all the way to the 0 line where the town is. And you have the valley over here on the other side of the map, which is essentially the 1 through 3 line of the map. I call this Potato Valley, and I will tell you why a little later. Now, the lake side of the map is the key to controlling this whole map. Simply put, the lake side encompasses, as I said, the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and 0 lines on the map grid. So if you control, in particular, the town area on Lakeville, you essentially control 70% of the map. And when you control 70% of the map, you're pretty much controlling the game. You're probably going to win the game, is simply how it goes. So if you're in a top tier heavy tank, the first order of business, you get to the town. Simply put, medium tanks can kind of go where they want, but they probably want to support in the town as well. We'll cover where tank destroyers will be going a little bit later. Tank destroyers tend to play a much more defensive role on this map, so there's not a heck of a lot of movement going on with your TDs, but there can be if you want to support in the town. So the first thing that tends to happen on Lakeville is you've got your scouts going down this center road here. This center road is all the way down the 4 line and goes on the entire west side of this lake. So when you spawn on the north side, like where I am here, you have a couple good rocks for really good hard cover that you can hide behind. This one right here is a very, very good, very popular one to hide behind. And if you have a really well camoed light tank, either because it's got a really good crew on it or it's just a very small light tank, you can even push as far as this rock here, which gives you a lot less protection, and you are much more likely to get spotted by any enemies who are on that road directly in front of me, or quite possibly their enemy scout tank, who might very well be hiding behind this rock here that I just fired at, for example. So by getting your scout in one of these positions really early on, you can spot any enemy tanks that are progressing into these areas here, making their way into the town. And the same goes for when you spawn on the south side. When you're on the south side, you want to bring your light tanks. You could bring it this far over here. This rock has some cover from the north side there. Not as much from the town if you're trying to protect yourself. There's also this rock right here, which gives excellent cover for the most part. You just got to play really small and try and make yourself as small as possible, because there's going to be tanks right there. There's going to be an enemy scout tank right there that will spot you when you poke out. So you got to play a little silly, a little aggressive, or just make sure you have a really good crew and the proper equipment on your scout tank. This spot here will also light up any enemies going down these areas here from the north side, this area here, and even all the way up into here, that are making their way into the town. And I guess I pinged it too much, unfortunately. So getting your scout in those positions really early will warrant a lot of early damage, and that can make a huge difference, especially in the late game on a map like Lakeville. Now your tank destroyers. Your slightly slower tank destroyers, you can simply start on the south side by positioning here. From here you have very easy shots just inside your render range. As you can see there, just inside your render range along the lower road going into town. Right up until about that building there in the back is where you will lose sight of people. But if they're still on this closer road, you can still shoot them and shave off good chunks of HP from there. Now on the north side, you essentially kind of want to do the same thing with your tank destroyers. You're going to be putting them in that sector there, in the C4 sector, basically at the entrance of the lake road, directly behind your scout. Your scout that gets your initial spots for you will still be lighting up the enemy tanks that are progressing on the south side of the map there, allowing you to get really easy side shots and take off fair chunks of HP really early in the game. It's important to try and get as much damage this early in the game as best as you can. You don't want to sacrifice your HP though, because in the beginning of the game you want to try and maintain your HP as best as possible. So it's really tricky trying to find a good spot where you can get these shots into the enemy tanks. As you can see here, I can shoot all the way into the back. It's just within the render range, so you'd be able to see any tanks moving along down this way and any tanks coming down along this frontal road, which ends up going here into the town. Easy shots there, easy ways to get damage if your scout is doing their job, which they should be. So shaving off that early HP is really important, but it is equally important to try not to get spotted early out, because you could very well get bombed by artillery and your team winds up down a TD very early. Now, if you were in a slower tank, and this will probably apply to bigger tanks as well, things like E100s, really big heavy tanks, KV1s, Japanese heavies, if you're in a bigger and or slower tank, you want to take these back pathways that go into the town areas. Like this road here that I'm on, for if you spawn in the north, and this pathway in the back here if you spawn in the south. And why that is because the enemy scout that spots you will lose sight of you when you are this far away. You'll be outside their maximum spotting range, and if you do get spotted and you're still visible to the enemy, you will be well outside anybody's render range, so they can't shoot you anyways, which is great. You might get a pot shot from artillery, even if you're taking those back roads, so you do have to be wary of that. But the important thing is to just know which path you need to take, get there as quickly as you can, because it's important to get your tanks in good positions in the town before the enemy does. So on the south side of the map here, you can see this back path here, much better cover. You've got this nice little hill here, just cruise between it and this building. There's a bit of a gap here, but you have some rocks for protection, and then there's this little hill here which will block line of sight from any enemy scouts, and it will also block shots from any enemy snipers who are set up to shoot you early in the game. Now these front paths right here, I only recommend these if you are in a much smaller tank that is quicker and or has a good camo rating. If you know you have a tank that has a really good camo rating by itself and your crew is trained in, say, camouflage and silent driving, you probably could take this front path down here that I just drove down, which is this road right here from the south. You also probably could drive in through here right along the edge of the pier, basically along this road that I'm on right now, which goes this way to come into the town from the north side. Those are much more risky, and I only recommend those for faster tanks, simply put, because they have to get behind these buildings as quickly as possible without taking too much damage. If you take a lot of damage in the early game, it can be a major deciding factor in the way the battle goes for the town here. Now, once everybody comes up into the town and everybody gets into position, there is some major brawling action that's going on. The heavy tanks are trading shot for shot. The mediums are trying to position themselves to set up for flanks. It can be quite hectic. This big building here, it tends to be called the church. This is a pretty key point in the entire town, and pretty much the focal point of all the action that's going to be going on here. Now, from the north side, this corner of the church roar, I'm sitting right here. If you're on this side of the church, it is actually very easy for the enemy tank destroyers to get shots on you from here. I gotta, ooh, excuse me, sneeze coming. It's very easy for these tank destroyers sitting right back there in these sectors. It's very easy for them to get shots on you from where I'm sitting here. So you have to be very careful of that. If you are playing from the north spawn and you want to work the church, you need to pretty much be right up here. If you're in a bigger tank, your ass end might still be sticking out and letting the enemy team shoot it, but you pretty much need to be right up here to try and cover yourself as best as possible. So you have to have a really good side-scraping tank to battle the enemy tanks that are going to be right on this corner here. Now, from the south side, you have a similar predicament. You're a lot more covered if you come on this side of the church from the south side of the map. However, if you try to swing around on the lake side of this church, you will expose yourself to any enemy tank destroyers sitting over in this area. Very easy shots down these streets here from the sniping positions located at C4 and D4. So you can very easily take a lot of fire from there. Now, if you're in a medium tank and you wind up going to town, as you more than likely will, you need to be paying attention to where the enemies are located and where they're rotating to. If you see an enemy pull back down a street and then they disappear, chances are they're trying to get a flank on your heavy tanks. You need to be wary of that. If you see somebody on this corner here that I tried to ping just now, and then all of a sudden they pull back into this sector and then they disappear, chances are they're either retreating or more than likely trying to get a flank to come in from one of these streets to try and flank one of your heavy tanks. It's very important to be careful of that and also try and initiate those flanking maneuvers yourself so that you can get them on the sides of the enemy heavy tanks and start whittling down their HP pools. Now, what tends to happen is one team will win or lose the town. And if it so happens that your team wins in the town and you're still alive, you have a very critical decision to make. And it's simply, do you turn around and defend your base, or do you continue to push on towards the cap? And this can be a very tricky decision to make if the enemy team sent a sizable force down Death Valley and they wound up splitting up and have half defending their cap and half pushing onto your cap. When that situation arrives, I tend to just turn around and defend my cap. The enemy team can't win the game by defending their cap solely. They have to capture my base or destroy all of our tanks. They can't win by defending their base completely because I'm on the other side of the map defending my base. There are less guns, it's less likely that they're going to kill me when half their team is on the other side of the map, simply put. So you have to be paying attention to what's going on in the other parts of the map so that you can adjust accordingly. Most of the time I pull back to defend my base if we have lost the valley. If the valley is either being held or you have friendlies pushing down the valley, then simply push into the enemy cap, try and pincer them into their base area down here or into their base area here and this section here. Just try and get a pincer maneuver on them, get shots into their back, take them out of the game much more quickly. Now, excuse me, on this side here, this is what I call Potato Valley, and there's a very good reason for it. Potato Valley tends to encompass just the 1, 2, and 3 lines of the map. This is only 30% of the map, and yet a lot of the less informed or just plain ignorant players seem to think that this is the most important part of the map because it's the straightest shot from one base to the other. This is simply not true. If you control the valley, you control less than a third of the map. Whoop-de-doo. And plus, the valley is entirely swampy, marshy terrain, so slower tanks move even slower. Things like an E100 or a mouse. Well, first off, if you bring an E100 or a mouse into Death Valley, you're an idiot. Stop bringing your top-tier heavy tanks into Valley, for starters. I don't care how much gun depression or how good your turret armor is. Do not bring your top-tier heavy tanks into Potato Valley, because that makes you a potato. Take them into town. That is where the game is won or lost. But in the valley here, you do still need some tanks to come over this way, and at the very least, assess the situation. The valley can easily be held by simply 2 tank destroyers and your artillery, and that's all it would require. You could also have a scout if your team has 2 scouts or more. You could have a scout come over here and just kind of peek around this rock. If you spawn in the north, you could come up to where I am here and just kind of peek over and see if the enemy team has a lot of dumb people trying to make a huge push into valley. You could also do the same from this side. You can have a scout tank come up over this side here, take a quick peek, see what's going on over here, if they're pushing valley or if they're just trying to hold it and play defensively like your team might be, and just leave it at that. Now, you may have some medium tanks going this way to try and get a flank going on, and this is why it's still important to not completely discount the valley, but not treat it as, the part of the map that's going to be won and lost. You can set up some TDs from the south side on that little spot right there, basically on the very top of that square that I just pinged. There's some good bushes there, so really well camoed TDs will have some really good camo ratings, and there's good cover to hide behind. There's also this spot here on the south side where you can park your TDs with some hard cover right next to them, and they can get some easy shots up into the top of this ridge line here to punish anybody who's trying to poke over and get a flanking maneuver going on. Now, from the north side, you can also position some TDs kind of by these bushes over here, which are located just on the left side of this grid square that I pinged right there. You can also position at least one TD right over there in the sector that I pinged, and that will be good coverage for anybody trying to push over this ridge and get a flank going on. Your TDs can easily shave a huge chunk of HP off of them. And between two TDs and artillery supporting them, you should be able to hold Valley unless there is a massive push going on. At which point, if that's what's happening, your team should win town very easily, and then everybody should be turning around to defend the base. So that's essentially how it goes. It's a bit of a shorter video than normal. I didn't quite cover everything that I really wanted to, but I hope at the very least you found this video really helpful. A good drive around Lakeville, showing you some fairly key locations on the map. Again, thank you to Astreus9 for allowing me to host a training room. Fellow clanmate Astreus9 jumping in and basically doing nothing for the last 15 minutes just so I can spend the time to drive around the map and show you the key areas and how you want to win on this map. So this has been Mobius Y. Hope you found this video informational and that I will see you either in my next video or on the battlefield. As always, happy tanking.